You need to listen to my voice. That's the key. If you stop listening to my voice, things are not going to go so well. But if you listen to my voice, then you're going to enter into everything that I've promised. And they didn't listen to his voice, but God didn't give up. Deuteronomy 28, if you diligently listen to God's voice, you will experience covenant blessings. If you don't diligently listen to God's voice, you'll experience covenant curses. I mean, it's a whole chapter of the Bible is dedicated to this one message. He's really emphasizing the significance of listening to the voice of God. God spoke very clearly to the generation of Israelites who came out of Egypt. He spoke very clearly to them. He said, guys, you need to pay attention to my voice. You need to listen to my voice because it's really key to you conquering the giants in the land I'm going to give you and possessing that land and living out the fullness of your destiny. But when they got to that time where they were supposed to go in and inherit the promised land, they said no. And when they said no, they were rejecting the voice of God. God had come to them and said, this is your land. I'm going to enable you to conquer that land, and you are well able to conquer that land. So God spoke very clearly to the generation of the Israelites who came out of Egypt. They rejected God's voice, but this is what I want you to notice. They rejected God's voice, but God didn't give up. That first generation, they came out, God spoke to them. He repeatedly said, hey guys, you need to listen to my voice. That's the key. If you stop listening to my voice, things are not going to go so well. But if you listen to my voice, then you're going to enter into everything that I've promised. And they didn't listen to his voice, but God didn't give up. God spoke very clearly to the next generation of Israelites. They listened to God's voice and inherited the promised land. And so that's what Deuteronomy 28 is written to. It's written to that next generation. Remember, the first generation, they didn't go into the promised land, but then the children that they raised up, now Moses is instructing that second generation, and that's what Deuteronomy 28, that's who Deuteronomy 28 is spoken to. So they did listen to the voice of the Lord, and they did go in and they conquered the land. God spoke very clearly after that to each generation of Israelites. Many times in Israel's history, they rejected God's voice, but here's what I'm wanting to emphasize. God didn't give up. He didn't give up on them. So what happened is, after going through a long history of Israel rejecting God's voice and sometimes listening and often rejecting God's voice, God spoke to non-Israelites. And God used the non-Israelites who listened to his voice to provoke Israel to jealousy. That is a message all by itself. What that says is God doesn't give up. This nation had rejected his voice time and time and time again, so they had gone into judgment and they'd gone into exile, and many of the curses that were written in Deuteronomy 28 actually came upon the nation. But God didn't give up. Even although it says they had hardened their hearts, God didn't give up. And the way that we know he didn't give up is he spoke to non-Israelites, and the non-Israelites heard his voice, and he intentionally used those non-Israelites to provoke the Israelites to jealousy. That's the commitment of your God. So in a nutshell, let me give you a 1, 2, 3. Number 1, God speaks again and again. Number 2, if we don't listen, God warns again and again. And number 3, if we ignore his warnings, God uses others to provoke us to jealousy. I want you to think about that for a little bit. Would you like to know the ways of God? Would you like to know how he operates? Maybe you can relate to how this actually functions in your own life. You might even recognize this pattern. Number 1, God speaks again and again. I know you, none of you are in this category, I'm sure. Number 2, if we don't listen, God warns again and again. That's not God being mean, that's just God's patience. You know, if someone's about to walk off a cliff, you don't just sit by and let them walk off the cliff. You start warning them. And number 3, if we ignore his warnings, God uses others to provoke us to jealousy. That's the commitment of God. In all of this, God's heart is to bless. God is committed not because he wants obedient robots, but because he wants blessed sons. He's committed to us, not because he wants obedient robots, but because he wants blessed sons.